Hello, this is Andrea from OurDayDream back again for another awesome chat. This week we have David Zach. He is the lead singer of Remedy Drive. He is also part of the organization Exodus Road, which is a stop human trafficking organization. We talk in depth about Exodus Road, but also this chat was a huge wake-up call, so you don't want to miss it. So without further ado, here is David. Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I know that you have Remedy Drive, and right now Remedy Drive, speaks a good bit about Exodus Road. But how did you, what's your life testimony that brought you to all this?
How far back are we going here?
However.
So I met Laura and Matt Parker from the Exodus Road a decade ago. And I had been doing a lot of studying and reading and watching documentaries about boy soldiers, about trafficking in general, about slavery, reading a lot of Frederick Douglass, and especially Dr. King and his letter from a Birmingham jail in particular in his last speech. And I think all of that prepared me for when I met this couple that has the same number of kids that I had, that was doing justice work, that was rescuing young girls from sex trafficking. But I can trace back the desire to do something like that all the way back to when I was a kid, when my mom would tell me about Amy Carmichael, who would dye her skin with coffee to disguise herself and go in and rescue young girls from forced ritual prostitution. Inspired.
You're planning that in your daughter's life now too, that desire for service as well, right?
Well, I hope all my kids and anybody that I encounter, without being preachy about it, and I have to learn how to do that. But I think that there's a hesitancy to want that for your kids because it's sorrow, putting yourself in close proximity with sorrow. But I've realized that it's something that we all long for, in one way or the other. We want to be part of somebody else's story. We want to be part of somebody else's freedom, somebody else's hope.
Yeah. I did, watch where you spoke a little bit about your mom telling you that story, and it seemed to affect you in like a positive way. So like, when did it kind of it started forming whenever you were a kid? You started music first, right?
Yeah, the band started when I was in high school. And then after college, that's what I've done for a living since then. But I had written a lot of songs that didn't, and a lot of lyric ideas that didn't make it on any of our albums. The marketing department and the A&R department were really hesitant and honestly pretty combative and against the idea of taking the cause of refugees and boy soldiers and people impacted by slavery through music. They got the idea, they understand that it was a cool idea, but they just didn't want to take the risk of not making money.
Yeah.
So that was frustrating. So I've been doing music for my whole life, and there was an emptiness that came with success. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that it's easy to hold on to success, easy to hold on to everything that brings, rather than say, this is something I have to invest, this success, this currency, this platform, my stage, my songs. What am I really investing in it? And is it like a circular singing and talking type thing, or is there action combined with it? And so I'm really thankful that I've found an avenue to participate in action through the Exodus Road and other organizations that we volunteer with, but also to have music that not just emulates some of my favorite songwriters throughout history and the poets and the psalmists, but also emulates the artists that have a call to action that I think I hope that I can and continue to tie into that legacy and that whatever that thing is that art has a way to pull to the surface that other mediums don't have. Like there's just something about art that makes us realize, man, I do want to get involved in some capacity.
Right. I know last year I had kind of a lot of testing periods, and I realized that I started focusing more and more on myself and what I needed to do next, and that
Yeah.
I kind of lost sight of like, what can I provide for others? Like, how can I be of service to others? And I kind of realized that that was where, anxiety lies. It's when we're so focused on what we're doing next or the next thing or like I feel this way and I feel that way, rather than like, how can I serve you, is what kind of pulls you out of that anxiety and stuff like that too. So I feel like that's a cycle that, God says, love thy neighbor as yourself. That's that freedom.
Yeah, it's good to love yourself though.
Yeah.
And then learn to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. I don't have the psychological training for it, but I do believe there is something observable in selfless living
Yeah.
and a positive effect on our mental health.
Right.
Even when it's sorrowful, it seems counterintuitive, even when it's drawing into close proximity with sorrow. Isaiah the prophet talked about the man of sorrows acquainted with grief, which would be a term used for this new template of humanity and this upside down way of seeing the world, where the first are last and the last are first.
Yeah.
And I found that to be real, and therefore I don't hesitate to invite people into the danger alongside of me and into the sorrow and into the joy of laying aside my rights, laying aside my privileges, to take up and speak up for somebody else's rights and privileges. It's counterintuitive in our culture at whole,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
definitely a counterintuitive idea in a lot of what I see of the community of people that attend church buildings as well. This idea of putting my rights aside for someone else's rights.
Right.
It's become like the opposite of that, especially in recent years.
Absolutely.
And so this is one way where I get to practice that, and my love of refugees, my wife's love of refugees, my kids' love of refugees. We're gonna right here. I'm gonna record this. The first time I'm gonna record in our new space here is gonna be a band of 7 people that came to Nashville as refugees after spending a ton of time in Uganda,
That's
uh,
so beautiful.
escaping violence in Congo and spending all this time in a refugee camp in Uganda. And now they're here in my city, so I get the privilege of hanging out with them and absorbing some of that beauty and hope that you only find in people that have been through really difficult things.
Right. Absolutely. I used to work in a rehab, and it really does like make you understand why Jesus was so willing to die for us, because it's like, if only I could just take your pain away. Like, if only I could just, wipe away your tears permanently. Like, if only I can. And I feel like, it weighs on your soul heavy that you want to, do that. But then at the same time, um, it's a great journey to walk, because you just never know the impacts that you're making. So
It's true.
yeah. Um, so tell me about the Exodus Road. Tell us about the Exodus Road.
The Exodus Road is a counter trafficking organization, and we use technology, we use human intelligence, we use cyber forensics gear, hidden cameras, to find evidence of sex trafficking. infiltrating criminal organizations and gangs and cartels that are selling underage kids against their will in red light districts. Organizations that steal passports from women that cross borders and coerce them through fraud, through force sometimes into sex work. And so we find that evidence, we partner with authorities, whether it's like the equivalent of that country's FBI or the equivalent of that country's Homeland Security or counter trafficking or local police. We partner with police and law enforcement and government to do raids against those criminal networks that are selling people against their will, most of the time for sex, but also labor trafficking. Sometimes we get involved in labor trafficking cases as well. And our goal is that our evidence that we gather will contribute to the freedom of the people being hurt, but also the interrupting the criminal organization, disrupting their business, and arresting as high up in the organization as we can get. And all that's really difficult. It requires long-term strategy, which requires partnership with law enforcement, and it requires brave women and men to do undercover work and get in as close as we can to the organizations that are responsible for this.
Wow, it's an incredible operation.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many did you guys release then?
Well, so far, the Exodus Road is celebrating 2,000 rescues that we participated in, assisting women and boys and men in their freedom, but also celebrating 1,000 arrests, which I think is a really equally important number, because that prevents that trafficker for however long that they're detained from going out and continuing to sow this sorrow into the world.
Right. So I was watching the one video and you said that you're most famous for getting your butt kicked by an elephant.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little baby in Thailand, like 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I took my kids and my wife over to Thailand because all of our band's merchandise is manufactured at organizations that help rehabilitate and restore women and girls that have been rescued with art therapy and trauma therapy.
I love that.
All our t-shirts are cut and printed over there. And a lot of it is elephant themed because, you know, elephants, I love Asian elephants. I prefer them to African elephants. They're a little smaller. They're less intimidating, even though they're pretty intimidating. That's why we're over there. And so a lot of, like, we sell these little elephants at our concerts that are handmade by kids during craft time at Rafa House, which is the facilities up in the jungle and in the north of Thailand. And so we rode motorbikes out there, which was crazy, driving a motorbike with my two little girls on it. And my wife back then, she drove my son on hers, but this last trip we took a month ago, my son drove my wife around. He's 17.
Oh, nice.
And I drove the two girls on my moped. Yeah. But then we went to an elephant sanctuary, which does similar things. You know, they're restoring elephants that have been hurt by the tourism industry or logging industry, and they also have there's a massive property there that costs a lot of money actually to go, because it's an ethical place, and it's trying to counter and change the culture of elephant tourism, which is kind of gross in Thailand for the most part. But while we were there, that baby elephant, I was trying to take a selfie video with him, and he kicked my butt. And and so what was really cool about it is that the owners of Fail Army, it's called Juked In Media, they reached out and wanted to split licensing with me on it. So it's ended up in so many videos. Like there's a dog. I mean, if you Google man kicked in butt by baby elephant, it's always me.
That's funny. It's one of those things though, because I always tell my kids, like whenever I die, I want a plaque that says like all the crazy stuff I said, like raising them, that would make them laugh. whenever they went. And it's like one of those things like that your family can remember, you
Yeah.
know, and kind of would just give them a smile a little bit. Yeah. It's so cool. But also like you have that building over there where the people that you know escaped human trafficking, where they're helping and they're doing crafts and things of that nature. um Basically I feel like it's the same. How do I want to put this? It's like you're providing them with the purpose, because I feel like whenever we go through you know, trials and trauma and stuff like that in life, it's like giving back to that.
Yeah.
That actually like is a healing process. It's like I went through this trauma, like I'm gonna help you maybe with your trauma, or at least give you what I went through. And you know, that helps with the healing process. So is that what they're doing too? It's kind of like they're advocating them for the people that are still captive. Like,
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily the goal, because that would be a big ask of somebody.
yeah, yeah,
Come out of trauma and then to go enter into trauma. That's what Harriet Tubman did, though. You know, she
yeah,
she escaped slavery and then went out and helped other people, and that does happen, and it's beautiful when it happens. And I've met a lot of women and girls that have come out of sex trafficking that are now helping other women and girls recover from it, and boys. The thing that I want to be clear about these organizations that we purchase from, and the Exodus Road has the Freedom House in the south of Thailand, is it's not just about crafts and employment. It's about helping heal. It's about imagine coming out of red light district work at the age of 20 and you've been in it for 5 years. That's the only resume you have. So we help build resumes for girls. We help with art therapy and trauma therapy, like
yeah,
qualified people that have studied what happens to us when we're hurt and how that hurt can be repaired, and to give long-term skills, long-term, not just employment skills, but emotional skills. And you know, when you
yeah.
develop as a teenager under duress like that, it's going to take a lot of love and care to
Yeah.
to unravel everything that's happened and to be able to move in a healthy direction forward.
I've met somebody multiple years after being delivered out of human trafficking, and just like you really don't know the pain and sorrow that somebody holds until you meet somebody that's actually been in that type of scenario. Like it hurts them in so many different levels. So
But there's a resilience to us that I'm leaning into, and it's the
yeah,
main thing I want to talk about moving forward is with my songs and with because I've been writing songs about trafficking for 10 years, but I want to write about what I've discovered to be how miraculously resilient the human spirit is, and how
yeah,
we can be put back together,
amen.
and sometimes even more beautifully than we were before we were hurt.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's getting that, you know, that the right help. So yeah, they're blessed to have that opportunity for, you know, you guys to teach them healing, and, you know, also get them out on the right foot. Um, I loved how you had spoke about currency, the currency of our lives. It's like, what are we investing in our imprint on this earth?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I got
Um,
it from Isaiah the prophet. Like he said, if you spend yourself on behalf of the oppressed, then your light will rise like the noonday.
yeah,
And I love that idea that we all have something to spend our lives, the currency of our lives.
yeah. Yeah, and you're also an advocate too, and I love it. It's like, you know, we all have these talents that God had placed inside of us. It's like, you know, bringing that forth and using that in a way to actually bring an imprint, like put an imprint on the world while you're here.
Imprint's a cool word. I haven't heard that word in this context. I like that. An imprint on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we do, and I think that sometimes that we get so caught up on, everybody else's, talents, that we don't actually seek our own. And we definitely do have the availability to, make a legacy. And I think oftentimes people think of legacy as the money that you leave behind, but
Mm,
it's actually the impacts that you leave behind.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Um, and it's easiest to measure with your own kids. Um, but it goes beyond that.
Right. Yeah. So tell me about Blue.
Blue is a song that ended our most recent album. The album's called Amagama More. And in 2020, in January, I was in Thailand, and there was a particular operation that required us to spend a few hours in different scenarios with a couple of the same girls that were being sold in the red light district, and we were being strategic on how to get a certain sort of evidence against this network that was selling underage girls. And Blue, yes, I think we saw Blue 2 or 3 nights in a row. Her name was Blue, in her language it's Fa, or at least her nickname. And I had met, like, in 2014 when I was first going over to Thailand, I'd met these 2 sisters. One of them was Manny and one was Fa. And so for me, that name carries, that particular name, like, I didn't know it meant blue until 2020, because but I always remember this girl named Fa that was way into couldn't understand what she's asking me. She's asking me if I like Paul Walker from that movie at the time, and the song that went with the movie, like what's that song that went when he died, the Vin Diesel movie. And so she showed me that song on YouTube, and I was like, oh, okay, Paul Walker, because I couldn't understand what she was saying when she was saying Paul Walker. And so I have a real connection to the name Far from going back a decade now. And my friend who does undercover work and was with me on that trip, the last day, sometimes just to start to like collect ourselves and get ready to come back home and process some of the difficult things we saw, we would write a letter that we don't send, that we can't send, to somebody that we encountered that we're impacted with or haunted by. And he wrote a letter to Far. And it was really poetic, really beautiful. Like, your name is the color of, and I forget what all was his lyric and what I added to it, but he's like, your name represents sadness, but also the vastness of the universe and hope, and like the flower, like the morning glory. And this idea, my favorite lyric that I've written about sex trafficking ever is petals. And this is how you feel when you're there and you see this potential, you see this purity, you see this innocence and youth being taken advantage of. But petals once trampled underneath in gardens of broken dreams, in the early hours will open east when sunbeams descend. And that's about as hopeful as I can be without being ignorant. I've written about daylight and waiting for the dawn for 20 years now. And to tie it to this particular girl, Blue, and another girl named Blue that I met a decade ago, and all the girls like them, with this belief that when the sun shines down, the petals open towards the sunlight. And you can see that. You can see, like here to the east in my house, you can see all these rose bushes, and their petals actually reaching for the light. And Blue, whether or not she knows it, just like me, just like you, were reaching for the light in whatever way we know how. drawn to beauty, drawn to hope.
Yeah.
Uh, and and you can see that in her smile. But it's what's difficult about doing undercover work is you see a smile, you see laughter, you see a cheers, because it is a party scene. But then when you're not looking, but the camera sees, you see that veneer just slip away. You see the mask that we all wear in that scenario. You see the transparency behind it, and you can only want something more for her. That's all. That's what you're left with is like, I just want something else for this girl.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's incredible too that they connect with you because they do have a hard time um with men in general. And so I guess maybe it's knowing that, you're trying to help them out of that. Um
They never know, though, is the thing. We can't come out of character. We pretend,
yeah,
um, so we can never tell them that we're there for what we're actually there for.
right. Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Your latest song is Empress Exile.
Hmm.
Can you tell me about that?
A year ago, right here, when Russia invaded Ukraine, there is a sorrow in my heart, and I just started playing piano and writing a little bit, thinking of all the families that were being devastated, all the people running scared. I followed a lot of Ukrainian celebrities on TikTok and watched their videos. You'd see Russian jets flying over their homes and a missile that hit one particular residential area early on in the conflict. And just the sadness that just whatever, all the contributing factors, including the ego and the arrogance and the narcissism that so often is displayed by empirical behavior, empire behavior, whether it's Russia or the United States or Great Britain in history, or Babylon or Rome. Just this idea, Pax Romana, um, like Pax Romana would be peace, but also Roman peace, but at the edge of the sword. And just like the colonizers throughout history, stealing what's not theirs to take. The Trail of Tears, a native mother being forced out of her homeland, carrying her kid on her back. Just that hopelessness that comes with war, and the arrogance that people have to take what's not theirs, to go into somebody else's land and say, I want that, that's mine. And most people are content with saying, well, it's just the way the world is. If we don't take it, somebody else will. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay
Yeah.
with the world the way it is. I believe in something else. I do with all my heart. And it's easy to despair. But for me, I take hope and I take solace in the idea. And this is actually, ironically, the song itself and my hope in the midst of all this comes from a quote of a Russian from way back in the day who said, is human history really, really, really this idea of a great darkness, a great evil, crushing and destroying what's beautiful and what's human and what's kind in us?
Wow.
Or is it the history of that darkness attempting to and failing forever and never accomplishing it? So why would we in 2022 at the time believe that now evil embodied in Putin and everything that little man is trying to accomplish, why would we think that evil is actually going to ever be successful at crushing kindness, crushing beauty, crushing hope? And so, yes, Empress, beauty, the Empress, she's in exile, in but not of this world. But she's still beauty. She's still hope. She's still true. She's still And it can seem like sometimes when I say these things out loud, they seem trite, they seem cliche, they seem like platitudes. So I'm always reaching for ways to convince myself that my hope is real, and
Right.
songs are a way to do this. And that last lyric, uh, hold on when all the lights are gone, when all the fights rage on, a song in the night, hold on. Fires, fires from the distant sun, just under the horizon. Um, wait for the dawn when the love of power is eclipsed by the power of love. Eyes fixed to the east. That all of that, like especially the love of power eclipsed by the power of love, and that's for me what I feel like is the break of day, and that we're just on the cusp of, and have been on the cusp of my whole life. Right onto the horizon is a light. We can't see it, but
Yeah.
I know in my heart of hearts that that light is there. Until now, I wait for the day star, that first star to come out before the sun rises, in hopes that all these things that are so wrong can be made right. All this thing that is so broken can be renewed, and everything can be made new. Not just some things, not just some of us, but all things can be made new. Like, is that a? I think that's too much of an ask to actually have that kind of belief or that kind of hope that all things,
Yeah.
myself included, victims of trafficking, survivors of trafficking included, victims of this stupid war, another stupid war, another arrogant conquest to take what's not ours to take. Can that be unraveled somehow and be made new again? Is there hope for someone as far gone as Putin, who enjoys the blessing of his religious leaders, just like a lot of times when we wage unjust war, when we do unjust things, it gets the stamp of approval from our religious leaders too. All of them falling into that same fallen Babylon of conquest. And I want to not be of that world. And that song is a way for me to say, yeah, I enjoy the benefits of conquest. I'm in these suburbs, but I'm not of them. That might be
Right.
another song that I'm working on.
I I don't know. I feel that so deeply in my life that struggling with depression for 34 years, that there is a change that can take place. But not only that, I mean, you look at Apostle Paul. You just never know if Putin could end up ministering one day. Like, we just don't know what could actually happen and all that. And so I just try to stay mindful that I have these doubts and sorrows and things like that, but I also have joy too. Um and we just don't know how much we're impacting the world at large. And I think we're allowed to be idealistic and hoping that the world could just reboot. I feel like COVID was trying to do that. Like, I feel like COVID was trying to stop everything to give us that reboot, to make us more introspective, as like, what are you doing here? What are we doing here? What is the purpose in all this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really missed a great opportunity there.
Yeah.
It could have been a nice reset, a nice chance to learn to love our neighbor. Um, it was great. Like for me, I got excited about the idea of of Sunday mornings not stealing so much of the budget that could be going to help other people and feed and clothe and welcome. Uh, like that was really hopeful for me. I was like, maybe we can, but I think we squandered a huge opportunity there as the human race.
Yeah. I feel like they're like the cycle that God has. It's like there's got to be death before that there's life. And it's like, you know, um Like there's got to be death before that there's life. So people get I guess whenever things start going a little rocky, people get involved in that rather than, using it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. There's only one place up at here. So like I'm not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's only one place to go but up. So but then you have, I wanted to touch base on two more songs if you have time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Lost Cause.
Okay.
Um, do you feel like that? I guess after talking to you, maybe Lost Cause feels to me like that time where you just like felt that void where you just wanted to do more. But can you tell me about that song? Just a little bit.
Um, that's one that I hadn't heard for a long time, but I heard it actually last week. I was driving with Dave Moore, who plays bass and guitar with us.
Maybe God's confirming something to you.
It just felt like I didn't realize how much I loved that song because we didn't play it a lot. But for me, it was just kind of like I had Frodo Baggins in mind when I wrote it.
What is that?
Frodo Baggins, the Hobbit from the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
And this quest he's on, and on one side it's a cliff, on the other side it's an abyss, and it seems like all hope is lost. It seems like there's no way to make this great journey, and I feel that consistently. And I feel a lot of pressure from religious people to say I'm not lost.
yeah.
But I honestly think that to say that I'm found or I have the answers, or I think there's an intellectual dishonesty to that idea. And so to be able to say I'm lost, but I'm not a lost cause feels right to me. Like, yeah, I'm still lost. I don't have the answers. I barely know up from down, especially navigating having teenagers now and having them go through difficult situations and come to me for context, and I'm like, man, I got nothing but I can
You're right.
listen.
I feel that. I have two kids in college, and they're like 17 was the worst.
Yeah,
They were
I mean,
so
I love it.
difficult at 17.
It's actually really great right now, and it's
Yeah.
difficult too. But
Yeah.
to be able to say that out loud and to put it in a song, and hopefully other people who are, I think in religious circles, that you're going to feel pretty left out to acknowledge your lostness, because it's kind of like a scarlet letter, it's kind of like you're an outsider, like, oh, we're happy here, this environment here is safe for the whole family, positive, encouraging. That's what we allow here. And I was in that environment back then when I wrote that. It was like 12 years ago I wrote that song. But to say, no, I'm actually pretty sorrowful.
Yeah.
I'm sad. I don't have the answers. I don't know why the Creator, that so many times in some of my favorite Psalms talks about, is the goodness of the Creator and the love of the Creator. Why the Creator would allow things to be the way they are for so long. Isn't there another option? Isn't there another plan? And where's the goodness? Where's the goodness, like, in that? Or just to say, like I say in a lot of my lyrics, similar to the psalmist, my namesake David said, where were you? Where are you? Why are you allowing this? And not for me, but why are you allowing this for humanity in general? Like my daughter said, you've obviously seen the video when my daughter said, when we watched that documentary about boy soldiers, she says, Dad, why not God protect those boys?
Yeah.
And honestly, I'd watched a documentary before that when I was writing the songs from Resuscitate, like Lost Cause, about the Lost Boys of Sudan, like just on their own at 17, at 15, on their own, wandering, easy for gangs to pick off, boys that are searching for community, oftentimes find acceptance in the absence of acceptance from safe environments, find acceptance in really unsafe and damaging environments. So lost cause is the boy soldier, child soldier in the movie Blood Diamond. He's this kid that ran away from or he got kidnapped, right? The army comes in, kidnaps all these kids, forces the boys into a very unique type of slavery called child soldiers. And they're and in the movie Blood Diamond, this dad, alongside Leonardo DiCaprio's character, they chase down this kid. And this kid, was blindfolded, forced to kill, doing drugs, forced to do all sorts of atrocities. And when that dad finds the son, and the son's holding a gun on his father, and his hand's shaking, and the dad says, "No, you're a good boy," and the kid remembers that through all that trauma, through all that brainwashing, through all that. And for me, man, my son was pretty young at the time when I saw that movie. And so to be able to say, only a dad, for the most part, at some point, once a kid's done enough stuff, and this kid had done a lot of bad stuff, only a dad would say, "No, you're a good boy." Only a dad remembers who we truly are, our real identity, our real makeup, our real design, which is why I think it's incredibly damaging to kids or to anybody to say anything other than "you are fearfully and wonderfully designed." Some people love to take some other kind of weird passages to make people feel bad about themselves, like you're wretched, you're blah 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 blah. It's real popular in a lot of versions of Christianity to really be mean about who we are. And I'm like, no, we're this beautiful creation made by a brilliant mind, designed by a brilliant mind. And so lost cause for me wants me to remember I'm not a lost cause, but neither are you. Neither's my kid at 17 now. To be able to hold him by the face and say, "You're a good boy," even when he's almost ready to shoot me, There's something about that moment that was life-changing for me in that film, Blood Diamond.
Yeah. They all the time, just take it personally, it's like in church, they would be like, just look at your father and how he treats you, and then you'll see how God is doing for you. And so when you're raised, without a father, like a father figure, it's almost like God kind of steps up for that role for you. And so, and it's kind of like that too. It's like, how far are you going to run away from him, from your father? And he's still going to be there. Like, you're a good girl, you're a good boy. Kind of like the prodigal son, but yeah, lost cause. I think that we should all, as Christians, man up to the fact that we go through trials. I think that's the only way to bring the unbeliever home. I was an atheist for 17 years, and you're not going to reach an atheist by saying that your life is sunshine and rainbows while you're walking around miserable. And I think it's like these truths that, as a Christian, I'm going through the same stuff that you are. It's just I have hope in a better outcome. I at least have the hope. So I think it's important that, we shouldn't put a mask on to be like everything's okay just because, we found God, but understand like we're all walking this walk that isn't so easy on earth. Some are walking, and really be mindful, like you say. Like, I don't watch the news. So I'm kind of ignorant to a lot of things that are happening in the world.
There's UFOs out in the last couple of days, if you haven't paid attention to the headlines.
Yeah, I just heard about that. And yeah, so I don't watch the news, so I'm super ignorant to what's happening in the world. And and I believe that we need to really open our eyes up to there's some gruesome acts that we can't really understand by the lifestyle that we're living in.
Yeah, I think honesty is important, man. And dishonesty is a learned trait in a lot of religious circles. The
Yep.
dishonesty, lack of acknowledging what we're feeling, what we're going through, and not just to win people, just for our own soul, to be honest and open about
True.
who we are in hardships and trials, and not in a way where there's this resolution, because I think that's something that is a repellent, is this easy band-aid um, for issues, whether it's world issues, local issues, or personal issues, like to put this band-aid cliche on it, because eventually however that's being applied, the recipient of that's going to realize, I still got a bullet hole under this band-aid. Who in their
Right.
right mind would put a band-aid on me? That's not love, you know?
Right.
Love is long lasting, figuring out what caused that wound. And if there's a lot of people with that same wound, figuring out what's causing these wounds and dealing with that, bringing justice
Ooh,
to
that's
it.
good.
And I'm talking metaphorically, but I'm also talking literally too. And that's why I do justice work. Compassion is important, charity is important, mercy is important, but justice, man, justice is important too.
Right. Absolutely. One more song, All Along. Um, I don't know. It's like God kind of converts you from being all about like, what can I do next for me, to like being of service for people, and starting to have that deep-seated compassion for people that you never really knew before. um I guess it takes away the arrogance a little bit. I don't believe that a lot of Christians have actually received that wholeheartedly. And I do believe that. And it's just like Solomon said, through much knowledge is much sorrow.
Mm,
Um, so, and what was the thing that he asked God for? Wisdom.
mm.
And he stated, through much wisdom is much sorrow. So I don't know. I just believe um, that I don't believe that Jesus was happy all the time either. I believe that he was sad a lot because he felt what other people were feeling and stuff like that. Um, but I mean, definitely is that, you know, it I don't know, there's a point of joy towards ignorance. Like I don't really, you know what I mean? Like I don't really know what I'm doing wrong and I don't really care. I'm just doing, but then there's that repetitiveness where you have Groundhog's Day and everything's the same thing over and over and over, and you're just living this repetitive life. But anyway, tell me about the song. That's what I was thinking about whenever I listened to it.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote that one 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm a different person today than I was when I wrote that song. But it was that song that brought success to my life. And so a song that says it's not everything it seems, the world and its dreams, ironically gave me my dreams, helped my dreams come true, and then exposed to me the hollowness and the emptiness of success and of building my own career, building my kingdom, um, which I like that. These castles that I thought were significant, and these achievements, these accomplishments, getting heard on the radio, having people know the lyrics to my songs before we end up playing them live. Like that was really special and really cool, but it never felt like what I hoped it would have felt like, which makes me believe, and you stop believing it, which makes me believe that, man, I think John Mayer said part of the reason why so many people have a hard time with substance abuse once they make it is when you get there, this thing, whatever there is, you've been climbing towards it, aiming towards it, your whole life, your whole career. You get there, you find that there's actually nothing there. And what a disappointment, you know?
Yeah.
And I realized that to some degree because of that song. So it kind of turned back around for me.
It's so
So thankful.
crazy.
I'm thankful for that song because that song was a song that a charity worker from that lived in Thailand played a lot, and wasn't quite sure what band it was. Didn't know anything about me, but it was Matt Parker from the Exodus Road. Was a fan of that song and our band before I ever knew who he was. So from 2009 on, we didn't meet
That's so
till
wild.
2013. Our souls were already connected in a way that we didn't plan for. And then when we met, that intersection between Remedy Drive, a rock and roll band, and the Exodus Road, a counter trafficking organization, was made possible because of that song being on the radio and connecting with him.
Right. That's so crazy because I was just reading a chapter this morning and I thought I really don't have enough time for this, but I'm really going to right now. So I did, because I've been trying to get more active into that because I've been dealing with a sorrowful period and it's bringing me strength throughout my days. But I think it was Deuteronomy 29 is what I read, but it was whenever Moses was telling the Israelites basically like you're about ready to hit the promised land, but once you hit the promised land, there's going to be a lot of bad things that are going to happen. People are going to come and attack you. Like all this bad stuff's going to happen. And so like all these years of reading the Bible, I didn't read that chapter. And I was thinking the promised land was going to be, all bliss. It's like you're working towards or you're walking towards the promises that God put on your life. But it was like Moses was warning them, no, there's going to be like really bad stuff that's going to happen once you hit that promised land.
Yeah.
But if you don't have like the praise and the hope in God, then you're basically going to be taken out of the promised land to another area. And yeah, so it hit me rather hard this morning. And then you end up, basically speaking about it's like you're going to chase these dreams or these promises that God put in your life, but whenever you get there, then what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've been getting word after word from different readings that I read, different books I read in the day, and different things brought to me. It's like stay more focused on the now. It's not always so easy, but
I
but
can get behind that. And
yeah,
it reminds me of my favorite Frederick Douglass quote. He said, I prayed for 20 years, but never got an answer until I started praying with my feet. And having the acknowledgement that the promised land is filled with adversity.
yeah,
And then just remembering, and once again, that is what it means to be hopeful or full of faith, is that, like Dr. King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And he said in his last speech, he says, like anybody, I want to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm just here to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up on the mountaintop and look over, and I've seen the promised land. And I might not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And that was the last thing he said. He's like, tonight, I'm not fearing anyone. I'm not afraid of any man. And then they stepped off the stage. He hugged his friends, went to bed, and was murdered the next day. Like that bravery that he instilled in that speech, and in that confidence in the face of adversity. There's a truth to that. There's a truth to that that's an attractive truth that draws people near. And like I said before, that other thing, that safe, happy, encouraging bubble gum religion that insists on our own rights, insists on our own privileges, defends power structures that are hurting people. That thing I want nothing to do with, but I can get behind that type of thing that Dr. King's talking about. I'm so careful what to call it.
Yeah,
I'm so careful with what words to use because so many words take on different meanings. But whatever that thing is, I want that in my life. And I think
right.
other people want that in their life, and they're drawn to that. They're drawn to dangerous unselfishness. They're drawn to something real, not this veneer, this Sunday morning veneer, and the
Right.
t-shirts and the bumper stickers and the like I personally, I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't understand when people put on a billboard like like a reference to a scripture. Like I'm not going to look it up while I'm driving my car, or even on a bio. Like show it to me. Show it to me with your life. Show
Yeah,
show me that. You know, I don't want to read it. I want to see it in your life. If that thing is really written on your heart,
right.
it'll be evident to anybody in your circle.
Yeah, and they would
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah, and they'd be like,
Absolutely.
"Oh, I kind of want that." Whereas right
Yeah,
now, if I get on social media, if I look at the influential people in that category of people, I'm like, "Ooh, I'm not sure what that is, but I don't want that for myself.
yeah,
I don't want that
right.
for my kids. That hatred, that anger, that
Yeah,
arrogance, that
exactly.
narcissism, that defense of narcissists,
Mm.
that aligning with power, that aligning with authority and political representation, and that obsession with being right and erasing the wrongs that have been done in the name of Jesus throughout history. Like, I want nothing to do with that.
Right.
I
I've had
don't.
a hard time. I've had a hard time, especially coming from an atheist to a Christian and, seeing the hatefulness. It's like many times I've thought to myself, like, why do I call myself a Christian and trying to bring people to that?
Yeah,
Like, I'm just going to start calling myself a disciple instead so that I'm not in that same type of category. It's like I've been through too much hell in my life. I'm not trying to cause that for somebody else, and I'm
yeah,
not trying to inflict that upon myself either.
yeah,
But I've had a very difficult time with that. That I definitely have to like go to God with and just give it, because if not, I mean, I couldn't like do what it is that I do by trying to bring people back home to God. Um, if I held on to like that stuff, because it gets really hateful, and people just come at you just to argue,
yeah,
just to argue with somebody. And it's really, there's a lot of arrogance in what they call themselves, the Christian community. And it's really sad because a lot of people uh, that the rehabs are filled with are people that that don't believe
yeah,
uh in God. So like they don't. And they call themselves, a lot of them, in Catholic recovery.
mhm,
Like they're recovering from going to Catholic school whenever they were younger. And um they have this this loss, like they don't even have hate for the religion, they just don't know what to believe in
yeah.
anymore, but they know they can't believe in themselves. So
And that will be like that same thing's happening right now to kids in high school.
yeah.
And so in 10 years and 15 years, they're going to have that same, like, they're going to be saying, I was really hurt by arrogant Christians at school or at that church building, or and they're going to be in recovery groups for that too. Like, it's
Mm.
the
It's sad.
parallels really, really obvious. And I don't, it seems like it's an intentional movement to try to, like, if I wanted to destroy all of it, it's like the best strategy for burning it all down is to keep on platforming the most hateful and the most arrogant of us. But that seems like what keeps on happening, and it's the kind of media that rises to the top. Christian media that rises to the top is us versus them. Like,
Mhm.
they're bad. They're just trying to indoctrinate us. They're just trying to do this to our kids. When in reality, you turn the mirror around and look what's happening at that camp or that festival. I mean, there's sex trafficking coming out of religious organizations all over the place. Like, it's a
That's
regular
so
occurrence.
sad.
There's there's control and manipulation and overstepping of boundaries. But kids learn pretty quickly that they can't say anything about it. They can't speak up about it because then you're criticizing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been really, and you get canceled for it as a musician, but I've been with my kids, I've been eager to show them you can point out what's wrong if it's wrong. If it's wrong, say it.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
if it's wrong, say it, and don't participate in it.
Mm-mm. No. And all through the Bible, it shows God going to like one person, going to everybody and be like, you're doing it all wrong. Like
Yeah.
the whole way through. It's like you're doing it wrong. And people are still like, I got it figured out. I know what I'm doing, but you don't.
Yeah.
But
Fool me
anyway,
once, shame on me.
yeah. I'm a mess. I'll be the first one to admit it. I'm trying to figure this stuff out every day that I go. I'm trying to figure out more and more who I am every day that I go. I have no clue where I'm going. I'm just walking randomly, hoping that God's like walking with me through it. And I don't know. I just think that that's leaving room for God to actually do things in your life rather than, dictating your own rules and regulations and all that. I'm just trying to be a better person every day. But what do you have coming up next?
We're working on some new music. We're gonna release hopefully a full-length album at the end of the year, and then I'm still going overseas with the Exodus Road to continue that work as well.
Where can people find you to donate to the Exodus Road? And
If you go to remedydrive.com, there's a lot of you'll be able to find your way. I think there's a link for the Exodus Road specifically that not only like one way that is really helpful is like these $19 a month recurring. That's helpful for a non-government organization in having a consistency in funds. But you can also set up your own fundraiser in your community. And I want to spend a lot of time this year celebrating some of those types of things that people in the bands community have done to raise funds, to raise awareness. And they're all different. They're all creative. Pizza parties, prom revenue going to help the Exodus Road. A woman in Iowa that ran a 5K in stiletto high heels. There's all these different examples of people in our fan base that are raising awareness and raising funds in different ways.
I think that's so great because if you don't really have the money or the funds to do, to help an organization, but to actually just, help out in those types of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's creative and it's beautiful that people are doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, also I know on YouTube you have quite a few videos speaking more in depth, giving pictures, stuff like that, but also about the people that are helping, to have these fundraisers and stuff like that, so
Yeah.
people can dig into it a little bit deeper on there too.
Yeah. We'll be putting out a lot of more videos like that this year.
Yeah.
Especially focused on people that are doing cool things.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. But thank you so much for joining me. I pray for your safety,
Thank you.
and your peace doing the service work that you're doing. I know it's strenuous. I mean, I don't know how strenuous it is. I haven't walked it, but I definitely know when you're your heart's so much invested, it's strenuous. So I pray for your peace.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for inviting me onto your show.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll be reaching out to you then, and I hope you have an awesome day. Have
All
fun.
right.
Enjoy your video.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
If you like this message, please hit subscribe because we have an awesome guest coming up every week and I don't want you to miss out. Again, we have merch. If you want to check out the description for the link. I hope you have an awesome week. God bless, and I'll see you next time. Bye.